It is difficult to imagine the Philippine educational landscape without the private schools. The private schools help the state fulfill its mandate of making quality education accessible to all Filipinos. It is in recognition of this role that the Fund for Assistance to Private Education, a permanent trust fund for private education, was established through Executive Order 156 on November 5, 1968. The Private Education Assistance Committee, or the PEAC, was created as the trustee of the fund. The PEAC is composed of the Secretary of Education as the ex officio chair and a representative each from the National Economic Development Authority, Catholic Educational Association of the Philippines, Philippine Association of Colleges and Universities, and Association of Christian Schools, Colleges, and Universities. For the development of private education, the PEAC takes on the role of funder, advocate, partner, and enabler. A national secretariat headed by an executive director executes the policies, programs, and initiatives of the PEAC for private education. In 1989, a landmark piece of legislation, RA 6728, or the Government Assistance to Students and Teachers in Private Education, or GASPE, was passed. The GASPE Act, which was amended by RA 8545 in 1998, institutionalized government assistance to private education in the country. The Educational Service Contracting, or ESC, Teacher Salary Subsidy, or TSS, Senior High School Voucher Program, the In-Service Training, or INSET, and Research are part of the Department of Education's GASPE program. The PEAC implements the GASPE program given the track record of the PEAC in program management. The PEAC has been involved in the development of the ESC, from piloting a scheme, which was a precursor to the ESC in 1982 to 1986, to implementing the ESC in 1986 to 1991, and from 1996 up to the present. The ESC today has close to 1 million beneficiaries. Part of the PEAC infrastructure for the GASPE program is the Regional Secretariat. The PEAC-RS is headed by the Regional Program Director, who designates a Regional Program Coordinator for the day-to-day program implementation in the region. The PEAC has the following responsibilities in the GASPE program: orientation, ESC certification, SHS voucher applications, processing, monitoring, resolving cases of schools with adverse findings, regular meetings and consultations with stakeholders, research and data gathering, in-service training. The PEAC is also accredited as a local continuing professional development, or CPD, provider by the Professional Regulation Commission, or PRC. Participants of the INSET programs offered by the PEAC have the opportunity to earn the required CPD units for the renewal of their professional licenses. From 2012 to 2017, the PEAC trained a total of more than 70,000 junior high school teachers, and since 2016, an estimated 17,000 SHS teachers. The PEAC also implements its own programs of assistance. The Assistance to Programs and Initiatives to Reform Education, or ASPIRE, gave funding support in the amount of 33.7 million to 99 projects of private educational associations since 2015 to 2016. The Research for School Improvement Towards Excellence has assisted 79 private school administrators and teachers writing their theses and dissertation since 2015 to 2016. The Dissemination Assistance to Research and Education, or DARE, has supported 16 faculty members who presented their papers in international conferences abroad since it was launched in 2016 to 2017. The Philippine Education Research Journal is an online resource for decision makers, policy makers, and practitioners in education. Its editorial board consists of highly respected educators and researchers. The Philippine Education Conference is an opportunity for school administrators and teachers to learn from educational leaders and experts here and abroad as they discuss educational issues, concerns, trends, and innovations. Recognizing the inherent strengths of the private schools in achieving excellence in Philippine education, the PEAC is committed to promoting private education as an integral part of our educational system.
Good day, everyone. I'm May Malanta, the Training and Development Associate of the PEAC National Secretariat. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar for physical education on streamlining the K-12 curriculum, an approach to determining which standards and competencies to teach. This program is part of the pre-opening activities and interventions of the PEAC to assist private schools in their recovery and readiness of operations for school year 2020-2021 amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. Our speaker this afternoon is a junior high school PEAC trainer and coordinator in physical education. He's a member of the Philippine Folk Dance Society, Cebu chapter, and a MAPIA teacher from the University of San Jose Recoletos, Cebu City. Their teachers, Mr. Janus T. Hagmok. Hi, Sir Janus.
Hello, Ms. Nai. Thank you so much for the introduction po. All right, so at this point, let me take over the screen now so that we will be able to start our session this afternoon. All right, so good afternoon to each and everyone. I want to welcome you all to this afternoon's webinar, which is entitled Streamlining the K-12 Curriculum, an approach to determining which K-12 standards and competencies to teach. For this afternoon session, we shall be giving attention and focus on how to streamline the subject physical education. So before we start and we begin, let me remind everybody on some house rules with regard to webinar. So we take notes while we are listening. The second one is we ask questions after the talk. And also you may download the handout after the webinar. And another reminder also, please view the slide presentation of the speaker in full screen on your device to better appreciate the content. So let's continue. So as what you can see right now on the screen is actually the banner which PEAC has been mentioning for the past few weeks. So it is entitled Streamlining the K-12 Curriculum, an approach to determining which standards and competencies to teach, knowing that this school year has limited number of weeks compared to the ones that we have, knowing that we are in this health crisis right now. So it says here on the banner, the new school calendar from August 24, 2020 to April 30, 2021 has shortened the regular school year from 40 to 33 weeks now. And here on the banner, we can see an important question that is highlighted. The question is, how will schools now in the new normal be able to cover the K-12 curriculum? So with this question, this is what we are going to address all throughout the webinar. Now, these are our objectives. Number one, we discuss the rationale and parts of the DepEd MELC's curriculum guide for school year 2020 and 2021. We explain the process of streamlining K-12 standards and competencies. The third, we relate the importance of alignment in streamlining with PEAC recertification. And the last objective is we apply the process of selected units of study in a subject area for a curriculum mapping identification of instructional materials, and preparation of a unit calendar. So these are the important objectives that we are going to highlight in this afternoon's webinar. So we know for a fact that IATF already approved the opening of school year, especially in private schools, provided that there will be no face-to-face encounter for teachers and students. So with this, what do private schools need to do in order to be ready for school year 2020-2021? So let's try to look at what the document says in terms of addressing this question. So let's try to look at what DepEd Order number 007, series of 2020 says. So for private schools, they should be able to submit in advance the following documents to DepEd regional offices for review and monitoring purposes. And there are three. The first one, their school's plan for compliance with minimum health standards that will be issued by DepEd, consistent with guidelines of the Department of Health, the IATF, and the Office of the President. The second one, their school's learning continuity plan showing alternative delivery modes of learning when face-to-face learning is not allowed, which shall constitute compliance with the requirement provided under Item 6 of Annex 3, DepEd Order number 021, series of 2019. And the last is the school's calendar. So DepEd made an announcement. PEAC also has reminded PEAC schools in terms of the submission of requirements. So ESC schools, which is due for recertification, these are the following deadline for submission of requirements. Part 1 will be from September 1, 2020, and Part 2, September 30, 2020. And for this case, the recertification now will be done in a remote type of recertification, which is now called e-recertification. And that will take from November 2020 to March 2021. So these are the important dates that PEAC made for ESC schools due for recertification. So what do ESC participating private schools need to do in order to be ready for e-recertification from November 2020 to March 2021? There are three. These are the PEAC Certification Assessment Instrument, Self-Ratings and Evidences of Compliance. The second one is the PEAC School Recovery and Readiness Assessment Tool results. And the third is the PEAC School Recovery and Readiness Plan in line with DepEd Learning Continuity Plan. So these are the three important documents that ESC schools will have to provide for the e-recertification. So what is that important document that ESC schools should submit? So that is the school curriculum for school year 2020-2021. And the school curriculum will have to be submitted by two important people. One is for DepEd, and the second one is for PEAC for the e-recertification. So with this, we ask the question, how will ESC schools in school year 2020-2021 prepare the school curriculum? So what we are seeing right now is a sample diary curriculum map. So since this is one of the documents that ESC schools should be preparing, so we are now going to look into this important document. So this is just a basic sample diary curriculum map. It is termed diary curriculum map because as what you can see right here, it is done in terms or by quarter. And alongside with it are the different parts now of a curriculum map, which is composed of the following: the unit topic content, the content standards, the performance standard, the competencies and skills, the assessment, activities, the resources, and also the institutional core values. So how can ESE schools now prepare a curriculum map that covers the K-12 standards and competencies in the new normal and meets recertification instruments? Knowing that this is now the school in the new normal, that we have shortened school calendar, teachers will have to work varied instruction modalities, limited face-to-face contact with students, reduced class time, and there might be frequent disruptions due to breakouts. So, in the making of the curriculum map, these are the three important aspects that we have to consider. The first is the use of the DepEd curriculum guide. And now DepEd just released the MELCS matrix and also the PEAC certification assessment instrument. So these three are going to be very vital in the making of our school curriculum map for school year 2020-2021. So let's try to look at what the document says about the guidelines with the use of the MELCS. Since DepEd released the K-12 most essential learning competencies, a lot of questions already now have been brought up, like, will the MELCS replace the existing 2016 curriculum guide? So to answer that question, let's try to look at the guidelines on the use of the MELCS. And in the guidelines of the use of the MELCS, page 2, it says, releasing of the MELCS does not downplay the standards set by the K-12 curriculum guides. Rather, they serve as guide to teachers as they address the instructional needs of learners while ensuring that curriculum standards are maintained and achieved. So let's try to look at the Filipino briefer on page 33. What does it say? Ang sabi dito, tandaan na ang layunin sa pagbuo ng MELCS ay hindi upang palitan ang kasalukuyang curriculum guide, kundi upang magabayan ang mga guro sa pagtukoy ng mga kompetensing mas kinakailangan ng mga mag-aaral sa taong panuruang 2020-2021. Sa huli, hinihikayat pa rin ng mga guro na sumangguni sa curriculum guide. So this is what is emphasized in the use of the MELCS. So let's go back to the question, will the MELCS replace the existing curriculum guide? The answer is no. So it is rather suggestive. It is not prescriptive. So let's try to look at what PEAC certification assessment instrument says also about it. In the standards of compliance, we can see here clearly in the assessment instrument tool that under the curriculum and instruction, it is clear that in the making of the curriculum map, there should be alignment with the school's philosophy, vision, mission, goals, and objectives, is aligned with K-12 curriculum guides, standards, and competencies, shows unpacked K-12 standards and competencies in different ways in all subjects, shows horizontal alignment between standards, competencies, assessment, instruction, and resources in all learning units, and articulates vertical learning progression across different grade levels. So it is very clear that there is a show of alignment in the making of the curriculum map. So we go back again to the question, how can ESE schools prepare a curriculum map that covers the K-12 standards and competencies in the new normal and meets recertification requirements? So the answer will be to prepare by using DepEd curriculum guide and or DepEd MELCS and PEAC certification assessment instruments. So we prepare the curriculum map by basing the curriculum map with these three important aspects: the use of the DepEd curriculum guide, the MELCs, and the PEAC certification assessment instrument. So let's take a look at, or a closer look on the different parts of the curriculum map. So here, under the unit topic content, content standards, and the performance standards, these are taken from the DepEd curriculum guide. And the second now, the competencies and the skills are taken still from DepEd curriculum guide and or with the use of DepEd MELCs. What about assessment activities and resources? This is now the responsibility of the teacher to provide, since DepEd curriculum guide and the MELCs does not provide these three important elements in the curriculum map. And what about the institutional core values? This is now taken from the school's vision and mission. So in the recertification requirement of alignment in the curriculum map, we have to ensure that there is alignment from the unit of topic content going to the content standard, the performance standard, the competencies, the assessment, and the activities, resources, and the institutional core values. So this should be clear that there is alignment in all these parts. So let's take a look at what PEAC certification assessment instrument says about alignment. So it is very clear in the assessment tool, in the standards of compliance, that the term aligned is highlighted. So we see alignment in terms of the philosophy, vision, mission, and goals, the alignment of the K-12 curriculum guide, and shows horizontal alignment between standards, competencies, and assessment. And at the same time, it also shows vertical learning progression across different grade levels to see that there is really learning from the students. So in the next part, let's now take a look at part by part as to how we're going to fill in our curriculum map. So let's take a look at first, the first one, which is the unit topic content, the content standards, and the performance standards. So this is taken from DepEd curriculum guide. So here, let's take a look at what the MELCs says about the content and the performance standards. The K-12 basic education curriculum is standards-based. The content standards cover a specified scope of sequential topics, identify and set the essential knowledge and understanding that must be learned. So the performance standards describe the abilities and skills that the learners are expected to demonstrate in relation to the content standards. So this is what the MELCs and Science Briefer on page 42 says. And what about the guidelines on the use of the MELCs? On page 3, it says, the content and performance standards are directly lifted from the curriculum guides. Its inclusion is to emphasize that the identification of MELCs is anchored on the prescribed standards and not a departure from the standards-based basic education curriculum. Thus, teachers are encouraged to refer to the 2016 curriculum guides in unpacking the MELCs. So what about the second part now under competencies and skills? So this time, this is taken again from DepEd curriculum guide and or the use of the DepEd MELCs. So let's try to look at the alignment of standards and competencies and activities in the briefer in MELCs. And it says, These standards are further represented as learning competencies, which are knowledge, skills, and attitudes that students need to demonstrate in every lesson or learning activity. So what are the characteristics of an essential learning competency? So under the guidelines on the use of the MELCS, page 2, it says, learning competency is essential if, number 1, it is aligned with the national, state, or local standards frameworks. Number 2, it connects the content to higher concepts across content areas. Number 3, it is applicable to real-life situations. Number 4, if students left school after this grade, it would be important for them to have this competence above many others. And the last one, it wouldn't be expected that most students would learn this through their parents or communities if not taught at school. So these are the characteristics of an essential learning competency. So what about the guidelines in the use of the MELCS, page 3? It says, as the department anticipates the challenges in employing various schemes in the delivery of learning standards due to COVID-19, the number of identified essential learning competencies per quarter were further reduced. Thus, the term most essential learning competencies, or MELCs. So here, in the current inventory of 14,171 learning competencies in the existing curriculum guide, so 60% has been taken, and the remaining now in the MELCs is 40%, or the total of 5,600 learning competencies. So, in determining the most essential learning competencies, the department collaborated with stakeholders from the Assessment, Curriculum, and Technology Research Center, during which the descriptor endurance was considered the primary determining factor. A learning competency is considered enduring if it remains with learners long after a test or unit of study is completed, or if it is useful beyond a single test or unit of study. So examples of such learning competencies include research skills, reading comprehension, writing, map reading, and hypothesis testing, which are essential in many professions and everyday life. So what is the source here? So DepEd used Manny and Horrell as the source in determining endurance. So here in the Tepson News, this was the source that DepEd used in prioritizing the standards using real criteria. So what does this mean? So in real, it stands readiness, endurance, assessment, and leverage. And later on, we shall be discussing this further as we move on to the process of addressing how are we going to work on in completing the curriculum map, given that we are into the situation that there's limited time and there's a shortened number of school dates for the coming school year 2020-2021. So again, for the competencies and skills, so this is taken from DepEd curriculum guide and or the use of the DepEd MELCs based on the real criteria. So let's go back again to what is emphasized in the competencies or the use of competencies. So endurance was the basis. And what does this mean? It simply means transfer of learning to real life. So this is what is highlighted whenever we use certain competencies, we have to ensure that these competencies will be able to develop skills for students to be ready for transfer and, of course, learning to real life. So let's take a look at what certification assessment instrument also has to say about endurance. So learning plans in each subject area that shows, okay, it's emphasized on this one, in this part here, a systematic and progressive development of students' skills, resulting in understanding and culminating in transfer of learning. So there is that emphasis on the transfer of learning. So in the learning plan, because when we make the curriculum guide, we have to make sure that there is also alignment in our curriculum or in the learning plan, because the learning plan executes what is in the curriculum guide or in the curriculum map. So here, we can see that their standards are stated at the start of the plan. Procedures related to learning goals acquisition, make meaning and transfer, and plan ends with a performance task. Activities and strategies done in procedures describe student action more than teacher actions, less teacher talk, and more student interaction. Values, integration with vision, mission, activities and questions related to 7Cs, activities and questions related to social issues and community events, activities and questions connecting to other subjects, and the use of multimedia and other apps to present lesson or produce student output, and activities that are differentiated or show the use of multiple intelligences, choice in roles or product in the performance tasks. So it's the same. So it's very clear in the use of the curriculum guide and the MILCs, and also in the PEAC recertification, that there are essential things that is being highlighted, and those are alignment, and it is directed towards transfer. Now, since transfer of learning to real life is emphasized in MILCs, the question now here is, how do we ensure its achievement in the curriculum design? So we use now the briefers on the use of the MILCs. So what are these? To ensure endurance or transfer of learning by doing any of the following with the use of the MILCs. And there are 7 techniques. Number 1, unpack into sub-competencies or tasks. Number 2, repeat in another unit or grade level. Number 3, follow up in higher grade levels. Number 4, cluster with other competencies. Number 5, merge with other competencies and rephrase. Number 6, focus on skill rather than on content. And the last technique is to align with unit performance standard. So let's try to look at the details on these techniques. And let's begin with the first one. So number 1 is unpack MILCs into sub-competencies. So in this example, we are showing to you the samples found in the MILCs in the subject health. So we can see there the highlighted competencies analyzes the negative health impact of cigarette smoking and analyzes the negative health impact of drinking alcohol. So in order for students to be able to analyze in determining its negative health impact, of course, it is better that students are also able to describe, to discuss, and to explain these sub-competencies in order for them to fully develop that certain competency which is analyzing. What about number 2? Repeat MILCs in other level for reinforcement. So let's try to look at the samples here in PE grade 4, grade 5, and grade 6. So we are highlighting the content, the performance standards here. So it says the learner demonstrates understanding of participation and assessment of physical activities and physical fitness. In the performance standards, it says the learner participates and assesses performance in physical activities and assesses physical fitness. So it is the same with grade 5 and grade 6 for reinforcement purposes. So not just leaving that there in one grade level, but it is retained so that there is reinforcement of learning. What about the third one? Follow-up milks in higher grade levels. So in PE, we're going to be using grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, and grade 10. So here, in the content standards, it is the same. But in the performance standards, we can see that there's a gradual change on the level of difficulty now in terms of transfer. The learner designs an individualized exercise program to achieve fitness. That says in grade 7. For grade 8, the learner designs now a physical activity program for the family, school peers, and to achieve fitness. What about for grade 9? This time the learner maintains an active lifestyle to influence the physical activity participation of the community, and also practices healthy eating habits that support an active lifestyle. What about for grade 10? It says the learner maintains an active lifestyle to influence the physical activity participation of the community and now the society, and practices healthy eating habits that support an active lifestyle. So it's very clear now, the follow-up milks in higher grade levels. What about the fourth technique? Cluster with other competencies. So this is again an example of health, because if we are going to look at the depth ed milks in PE, we do not see competencies which are clustered, especially in the milks that it is already very few, it is trimmed down. So the question there is, how do we be able to prepare a curriculum map when there are few competencies which is already found in the milks? So take note again that we also refer to the use of the existing curriculum guide to address that certain concern. So here we can see what is highlighted in these competencies. So there is clustering of competencies under analysis. So we have there the following competencies below. So this is how it's done. And the fifth technique, merge with other competencies and rephrase. So let's try to look at the milks in mapping. It says here, in music, demonstrates the melodic contour with movement. And in rephrased, it says now, demonstrates melodic contour through. So there is specification in terms of movement, the music writing, and visual imagery. What about in arts? Determine the role or function of artworks by evaluating their utilization and combination of art elements and principles. And now it is rephrased, explain the role or function of artworks by evaluating their utilization and combination of art elements and principles. What about in PE? Describes the difference between slow and fast, heavy and light, free and bound movements. And now it says in the rephrased, demonstrates the difference between slow and fast, heavy and light, free and bound movements. So here in health, discuss the important functions of food. So this time in the rephrased, it is now given attention that students will discuss or discusses the important function of food and balanced meal. What about the sixth technique? Focus on skill rather than content. So this is very evident in our subject PE. So here it says describe the difference between slow and fast and heavy and light and free and bound movements. This time it becomes demonstrates the difference between slow and fast, heavy and light, free and bound movements. So what about the seventh technique? Align the unit performance standard. So let's try to look at this one. So under fourth quarter in PE grade 7, in the performance standard, it says, modifies individualized exercise program to achieve personal fitness. Now, in one of the learning competencies, in this particular quarter, it says, keeps the importance of winning and losing in perspective. So at some point, there is kind of mismatch, probably, or not so clear at all in terms of the connection between the performance standard, which is modifies and keeps the importance of winning. Because keeping the importance of winning and losing may somehow sound in relation to sports. So what can be done? So we ask the question, will this alignment lead to endurance or transfer? So, given these gaps, how do we align standards and competencies to ensure transfer to real life or endurance for lifelong learning? What process can be done? So given that particular issue, we do streamlining the teaching and learning of the K-12 curriculum. So let's try to look at the image here on our screen. What do we see? So are we seeing a clear path of water flowing? So do we see a smooth flow in terms of the current? So I think you are agreeing with me in that particular observation. So this is actually what we call streamline. So this is something that engineers are very skilled enough to make streamlining possible. So engineers are trained to do streamlining. So what's a streamline? So a streamline is a path traced by a massless particle moving with the flow, or flow follows a particular direction. So there are two kinds of flow. The first is a laminar flow, which is fluid particles follow a smooth path in layers or laminae, with each layer moving parallel to each other without mixing and has visible streamlines. What about the other flow? It is called a turbulent flow. And a turbulent flow is a fluid particles move in a rough path and there are cross currents and mixing of layers has swirling zones. So, in the making of a curriculum map, there are a tendency that we may somehow create two kinds of flow. It can be a laminar flow or a turbulent flow. So what kind of flow that we should be making in our curriculum guide? Of course, I think you are agreeing with me that we should be making a laminar flow. So let's take a look at this one, this diagram. So we're seeing arrows here, and there are questions that we ask. How will this learning competency be able to achieve the content and performance standard? How are these competencies related to the performance and content standards? So with that question in mind, we should be able to make it a point that there is alignment and flow and a proper flow of the curriculum guide. So this is now an example of a laminar flow in a curriculum map of our subject physical education. So what do we see now in the curriculum map? So we can see a particular alignment from the unit topic to the content standards and the performance standards and the corresponding competencies or skills that students should be developing, and the proper assessment and activities leading to the development of the competencies, and of course, the resources to help us out in the attainment of these certain skills, and of course, with the institutional core values. So, in streamlining, it is not simply reducing competencies, but rather it is establishing alignments between standards, competencies, assessment, activities, and resources. And what are the benefits of streamlining? We have the following. It has clarity of process. There is efficiency in teaching, focus on skill, and scaffolded skills development is evident. And also there is evidence of learning. So this is the beauty of doing streamlining. Now in the PEAC certification assessment instrument, again, this is reiterated that in the standards of compliance, we have to see to it that in the curriculum map, there should be alignment with the philosophy, vision, mission, and goals and objectives. There is alignment with the K-12 curriculum guides and the standards of competencies, and must show horizontal alignment between standards, competencies, and assessment. And also, it must show vertical learning progression across different grade levels to ensure that there is development of the skills. So what do we see here now? Is this a laminar or a turbulent flow? So there must be something that we can do in order to make this into a laminar flow. So in streamlining, there are two techniques. So the first technique is aligning the content standard and competencies with performance standard. And the second technique is identifying power and supporting competencies and clustering these. So in the next part of our presentation, I will let you go through the process of streamlining. So I hope all of our viewers, especially our PE teachers now, are attentively listening so that we will be able to grasp how to streamline in the making of our curriculum guide. So let us now continue. So let's apply the technique, the first technique in streamlining, and that is aligning the content standard and competencies with performance standards. So how to go through with this technique. So before we proceed, so let me have a short recall again on what's the basis in the use of the endurance in the competencies. So what is emphasized is endurance, and endurance would always lead to the alignment with performance standard. So, meaning to say, this would lead to transfer so that students would be able to be ready for work and life in the 21st century. So using technique A, aligning the content standard and competencies with a performance standard. So we use this diagram. So I believe in our previous inset trainings, dear teachers, we have seen this diagram already. So we're showing you this diagram because this is one way to help us look at a clearer picture, a bird's eye view in terms of the alignment of the contents that we should be putting on in our curriculum map. So in this diagram, we ask how come transfer is at the top and what are these arrows pointing out? So for us to be able to work on with this technique, there are 7 steps in order for the aligning the content standards and competencies with the performance standards. So these steps are: number 1, copy the content and the performance standards and write the unit topic. Number 2, unpack the transfer goal and performance task from performance standard, then write in the diagram. Number 3, review DepEd curriculum guide or the school curriculum map and take out competencies that are not directly aligned with the performance standard. These competencies may already have been taught or may be taught in another grade or unit. Number 4, classify the remaining unit competencies in terms of AMT learning goals, where A and M with content and T with performance standard, and pack when needed. Number 5, unpack the essential question and the enduring understanding, and with M cluster of competencies, establish link with content, performance, content standard, and performance task. Number 6, cluster the A competencies and establish link with content standard and performance task. And number 7, determine assessment for A for quarterly assessment type and M for the written work type. So let's take a look at part by part on how to work on with the first technique. Let's try to work on with the first step. So again, do we see a laminar or a turbulent flow here? So in order for us to be able to address this concern, we do the first technique. And step 1, it says, copy the content and the performance standards and write the unit topic. So here, we take or we get automatically the unit topic and the performance and the content and the performance standard and place that one here in our diagram. So we're now able to fill in the unit topic, which is festival dance, and the performance and the content standards says demonstrates understanding of guidelines and principles in the exercise program designed to achieve personal fitness. In the performance standard, it says modifies the individualized exercise program to achieve personal fitness. So we go now to step 2, unpack the transfer goal and performance task from the performance standard, then write in diagram. So these are the steps. Number 1, in the performance standard, we can see clearly the modifies the individualized exercise program to achieve personal fitness. And what to do next? So we make the transfer goal. So how do we make the transfer goal? So using the STEM, students on their own and in the long run will be able to. So what we will be adding now here is actually what is found on the performance standard, which is modify, okay? So we use the verb modify individualized exercise program using the festival dance steps plus the world purpose. And what is this? To achieve personal fitness. And number 3, we make the use of the grasp in the performance task. So we make a real life situation so that students will be able to really appreciate the thing that they are doing, so that they can also understand that what they are doing has something to do with life. So here in this performance task, we can see that there is a clear real world purpose. So it is now in the underlined phrase there, modified exercise with festival dance routine. So in this diagram, we can really see an alignment of what students are expected to do. So we now put our transfer goal and the performance task on these parts. So in the transfer goal, we write festival dance steps as a modified exercise program. And in the performance task, modified exercise with festival dance. So at least now it's becoming clearer. What about the third step? The third step says, review DepEd curriculum guide and the school curriculum map and take out competencies that are not directly aligned with a performance standard. These competencies may already have been taught or may be taught in another grade unit. So in this case, we mark X on the last competency, which is keeps the importance of winning and losing in perspective. Since we feel that this might not be so useful in terms of its usage. So here, in step 4 now, classify the remaining unit competencies in terms of AMT learning goals. A and M matched with content standards and T with the performance standards, and unpack when needed. So in this technique, we are labeling the competencies under acquisition and make meaning. So we now have these competencies marked A and M. So this is content standard only. So what is highlighted here are the competencies under the content standards. Now, what we are showing to you right now in the diagram are actually the verbs that will help us in identifying the verbs that can be used under the learning goals of A, M, and T. So here, for A, we have facts, vocabulary, and definitions. And these are the example verbs. What about for M? Principles and generalizations or big ideas of the discipline. And these are the example verbs or action words. And for transfer or the performance or the product, these are the example verbs that we can make use in determining these learning goals. So still under step 4, we now classify the remaining unit competencies since we're done in identifying and labeling A and M, this time for T, for the performance standard. So in this case, we only have one, executes the skill that skills involved in the dance, which is somehow very closely related to the performance standard. So we place that one now in our diagram. So under acquisition, we place learning competencies related to fitness routine modification. And in the make meaning, this is now going to be our next step, step 5 and step 6. Step 5, it says, unpack the essential question and enduring understanding, and with M cluster of competencies establish link with content standard and performance standard. So we unpack the essential question and we say, or we ask, how can dance improve one's fitness level? And what is our corresponding enduring understanding? Students will understand that the improvement of one's fitness level depends on their fitness modification, such as festival dance routine. What about step 6? Cluster the A competencies and establish link with content and performance standard. So here in the acquisition, we write learning competencies, which is related to fitness routine modification. So now what we are seeing in the diagram is now very clear that there is alignment on our goal to achieve transfer. So what about step 7? Determine assessments for acquisition, which is a quarterly assessment type, and M for the written work type. So here in the QA or quarterly assessment, we work on with facts, definition, and process on fitness routine. What about for make meaning? We do movement analysis on fitness routine. So we ask the question, is this now a laminar or a turbulent flow? So I think most of us now would agree that this is now becoming a laminar flow. But is this enough? Okay. So in order for us to really make a smooth flow in our curriculum map, we also use another technique in streamlining, and that is now identifying power and supporting competencies and clustering these. So there is going to be an advantage really in using all these techniques. We will get to appreciate this one as we go through with our discussion in streamlining the curriculum. So what are power standards and competencies? So it is a focus for teachers on what to teach. It provides higher level of learning and also a prioritization of the academic standards. And this provides purpose or reason for learning a specific competency. So this is the meaning of power standards and competencies. So what we are seeing right now on our screen is actually a fence, a strong fence. And a fence is composed of two kinds of lines. We have a vertical line and a horizontal line. So the vertical line represents the power competencies and the horizontal lines represent the supporting competencies. So in the power competencies, these are curricular competencies that are directly achieved the performance standard and pass all real criteria. What about for the supporting competencies? These are curricular competencies which contribute to or serve as steps to the attainment of the power competencies. So let's take a look at some examples in terms of determining power and supporting competencies. So which is a power competency and a supporting competency here? So let's take a look at these examples in our subject physical education. So we have grade 7, grade 8, grade 9, and grade 10. And we are putting here certain examples under column 1. Okay, describes the nature and the background of the dance, describes the nature and the background of the sport, distinguishes facts from myths and misinformation associated with eating habits. For grade 10, analyzes the effects of media and technology on fitness and physical activity. And on item number 2, we have these competencies. For grade 7, it says, executes the skills involved in the dance. What about grade 8? Executes the skills involved in the sport. What about for grade 9? Recognizes the needs of others in real life and in meaningful ways. What about for grade 10? Critiques or verifies and validates media information on fitness and physical activity issues. So we ask the question, which is a power competency and a supporting competency? Let's try to analyze, teachers. Okay, I think all of us have the same answer here. Yes, it is under number 2 or item number 2. That these competencies represent power competencies, and item number 1 are considered supporting competencies. So we ask the question now, how can identification and clustering of power and supporting competencies be done for streamlining the curriculum? So in order to answer that question, we do the following steps. Number 1, identify power and supporting competencies using the real from the core set of competencies. Number 2, make clusters of power and supporting competencies. Number 3, sequence clusters with the last related to the performance task. And the 4th one is set the budget of time for teaching the clusters. So for the second technique, we're identifying the unit power and supporting competencies. First is we use the real criteria. So this was the thing that was mentioned in the briefer with the use of the milks. So using the real criteria, and real stands for readiness, endurance, assessment, and leverage. So let's try to look at part by part each of these criteria. So for readiness, this is going to be our guide. When the competency represents learning that is essential for success in a new unit or course of study or succeeding grade level, it has readiness. And using the guide questions, does this standard contain prerequisite content or skills necessary for the next unit, course, study, or grade level? So we use the example in our content standard in physical education. The learner demonstrates understanding of guidelines and principles in exercise program designed to achieve personal fitness. So this is what readiness say about. And now, endurance. When the competency represents learning that goes beyond one course or grade level, it is representative of a concept or skill that is important in real life, it has endurance. Guided with this question, does this standard have value beyond one single test date? Will this standard endure beyond the test? Will the knowledge and skills be important beyond this unit? An example to that is, again, the content standard in physical education. The learner demonstrates understanding of guidelines and principles in exercise program designed to achieve personal fitness. What about the next criteria, which is assessment? When the competency is often tested in an achievement or admissions exam or for a job, it has value for assessment. Just like taking a national achievement test and even taking up entrance test. So if students are able to answer this kind of tests, then there is assessment. What about the last criteria, which is leverage? When the competency represents learning that is applied both within content area and in other content areas, it has leverage. Guided with this question, does this standard have multidisciplinary connections? Is this standard relevant in other disciplines? Which discipline can this be linked? So same example that's shown. So in technique B, identifying the unit power and supporting competencies with real, we use this sample diagram. This is a better way for us to be able to identify competencies having real criteria, and from here, we can be able to identify whether these competencies are power and supporting competencies. So let's take a look at the example in quarter 4, grade 7 physical education. So here, we're able to label competencies which are supporting and power competencies. Let's take a look at one by one. Undertakes physical activity and physical fitness assessment. So we consider this one a supporting competency. Number 2, reviews goals based on assessment results. Still, it is a supporting competency. The third one, addresses barriers, low level of fitness or lack of skill and time to exercise. Still, that is supporting. What about describes the nature and background of the dance? Still, it's a supporting competency. What about the next competencies? Executes the skills involved in the dance. Monitors periodically one's progress towards fitness goals. Performs appropriate first aid for dance-related injuries, for example, cramps, sprain, and heat exhaustion. Analyzes the effects of exercise and physical activity participation on fitness. And the last, assumes responsibility for achieving personal fitness. So the remaining competencies now are considered power competencies. So this time, we are now going to cluster and budget the time of unit power and supporting competencies by using this diagram. So during the first and second meetings, we placed these competencies. All right. And on the third and sixth meetings, these are the power competencies that we are going to indicate. So I hope this is so clear to us now that there is really efficiency now. What we are seeing right now is in this technique, we are actually truly blessed because we can be able to make it a point to really maximize the use or the application of these certain competencies. What about the 7th and 8th meetings? So we now have these two competencies. So for grade 7, quarter 4 has 3 clusters of 10 core competencies for 8 meetings. Note that the number of schedule or of clusters of competencies may be adjusted depending on term of schedule. So is there something that we can also do for us to really maximize the time in achieving all these competencies to our students? We now do the merging and the rephrasing. So after we cluster the budget of time of unit and power supporting competencies, we now do the merging and the rephrasing. So here on our example, we can see it is highlighted that these two competencies, since these are closely related to each other, we merge it and we try to rephrase it, and this now becomes in the undertakes physical activity and physical fitness assessment and addresses barriers, it is now termed as undertakes physical activity and physical fitness assessment and addresses barriers to exercise. So what's good about this is that we are able to really budget well the time that we have in P, especially we only meet once a week. So in this particular technique, we can somehow maximize, we can really maximize the number of days that is intended for our subject area. So we asked that a question, is this a laminar or a turbulent flow now? Yes, I guess you are agreeing with me now that this is somehow becoming a laminar flow. So in grade 7, quarter 4 has 3 clusters. Now it is becoming 8. So we were able to merge 2 competencies to 1. And also maybe other learning competencies merge and rephrase. Yeah, so that's what we did in the example earlier. So isn't it wonderful that we are able to maximize the full grasp in applying and developing these particular learning competencies to our students? So again, we asked the question, is this now a laminar or a turbulent flow? So we proceed now to the third part in the making of the curriculum map. And these parts are for assessment, activities, and resources, in which this time the teachers will now have to make. All right. And also for part 4 is the institutional core values, which is now taken from the school's vision and mission. So let's continue. So for the mapping of assessment and activities with unit, power, and supporting competencies, it is best to make use of this sample diagram. Okay, so what we are seeing right now in this diagram, we can see clearly how we are able to put on the power and supporting competencies, its corresponding assessment, and of course, the activities. And this time, since it is timely that in the current situation right now, dear teachers, that we should be very flexible in the application of student learning in terms of activity. We should have these 2 options, offline and online resources, and of course the corresponding core values. So let's take a look at our example now in physical education, how we are placing or putting up the necessary aspects in these particular diagram. Okay, so what we are seeing right now is actually how we put on the specific competencies and the assessment and the PEAC learning module activity or the materials. So we have both offline and online resources and the institutional core values. So let's take a look at these examples. So we considered in the power competency, the executes the skills involved in festival dances suited to the different body types of each student. The supporting competencies, it says, undertakes physical activity and physical fitness assessment related to festival dance performance. Examples here are cardiovascular endurance, flexibility, and coordination. Reviews goals based on assessment results. Addresses 10 barriers to exercise and participation of dance activities. And also describes the nature and background of the dance. So in this particular learning competency, we have the appropriate assessment for this one. Okay, so since the competency is asking, well, let's take a look at these examples now. Undertakes, meaning to say, students will really have to demonstrate. So there should be a physical activity that they should be working on. That's why our assessment here, it says demonstration. What about reviews goals based on assessment? So they do self-assessment because that's what the competency is asking them to do. What about situation? What about for the addresses 10 barriers to exercise and participation dance activity? We do situation analysis to barriers. Next is describe. So what students are asked here to do is they do movement analysis. So as what we can see here in our PEAC learning activity materials, yes, by the way, this is now available in PEAC website that the learning modules can now be used in order for the students and teachers to really maximize its usage. So PEAC is very, very kind po that they are preparing these materials to help us out in making our learning activities. Okay, so we have here in the offline, it's very evident that in the PAC learning module, we can see there the page number and the corresponding activity title. And also in the online resources, we can actually make use of this one just to click the link, and students will be watching. And later on, let's try to demonstrate how to work on with these examples. All right. So I hope this is now clear to us. And also in this diagram, we can see alignment in terms of the competency, assessment, the learning activities, and the corresponding institutional core values. We can see the alignment here on these parts and also the learning progression of the students in terms of the development of the learning competencies. So what we are seeing right now are actually the screenshots from the learning modules, which is now available at PAC website. So let's take a look at these examples. So this activity is entitled Fit or Not. So it is stated here in the instruction, the following are statements related to the physical fitness, and this activity will assess yourself of your current fitness level. Check the item that relates to you, your fitness characteristics. So here, students are really able to assess themselves whether they are in that path now, that they are becoming very healthy, or they should do something, or whether they do something in order for them to be fit. So there are points to ponder at the same time, and there are process questions also provided in these modules. So you also have barriers to exercise. So what is seen really in the learning competencies, there are corresponding activities and the appropriate assessment provided for students. Okay, here we go. These are other examples. You see, it is really emphasized that the main reasons why many students are not that physically active because of these certain barriers to exercise. So it's really highlighted in the learning module. What about dance injury flowchart? Yes. So in order for students to address also injuries, it is found in the learning module. What about this one? The FITT guidelines and training principles. So you have the process questions, benefits of festival dances in relation to fitness. So it is clear here in our learning module that is highlighted and emphasized the different benefits of dancing festival dance. So what about this one in the online resources? So we have video clip analysis on the nature and the background of festival dance. So we have 3 sample videos. The first video is Panagbenga Festival. The second one is the Kadayawan Festival. And the third is the Sinulog Festival. So let's try to look at this example, how students try to grasp on with the online example. So students now will be watching these different festivals, and they are going to analyze something from the video? Okay. So it's very clear that the movements in these festivals are really highlighted. Okay. And these are other online resources that they can make use of. Okay. So let me just go back to the previous slide. So after watching the video, students will now have to answer based on the guide questions provided in the learning module. So we have here example guide questions. Cite 3 festivals in the video originated from. Okay, how do the festival dances in the video differ from each other in terms of the following? Then what made the festival dances spectacular? Number 4, why do Filipinos engage in festival dancing activities? Why do we need to learn festival dances in other provinces and cities? So there, students are really able to engage themselves in learning this particular topic. So these are other online resources. So here on the first one here, so it is a demonstration of the physical fitness test. And on the second, we can see here fitness apps that students can use in maintaining their fitness level in terms of doing physical fitness activities. And also students are guided here in the barriers to physical activity and how to go through and how to cope up with these barriers for them to be healthy. So in this video, we are going to look at an example video of what should be done, okay, in order for us to assess our students in terms of physical activity. So in this video, we will see a student recording herself in terms of doing physical modifying festival dance and making it into an exercise program. Let's watch this. All right. So with that video, students are actually also guided with the use of the assessment. So since the topic is about festival dance, this is now our sample assessment tools that can be used in that specific unit topic. So we have that rubric on evaluation after learning the steps. So in the learning module, we have put an emphasis to the basic festival dance compositions or figures which students can make use of after learning what is seen on the video, and guided by these assessment tool. So we have this one, correctly demonstrates the step in time with music and with a high level of confidence, correctly demonstrates the steps in time with music with growing confidence, correctly demonstrates the steps in time with music with constant supervision and guidance, and the last demonstrates with step with observed error and low or no confidence at all. And we can also see here that there is a self-assessment instrument that students also will ponder whether they are ready, especially in the making of the performance task. So this is an example of a self-assessment instrument. I can identify the different festival dances in the regions they belong to. I can relate the dance steps based on the festival dances to be used in my dance. I can add different arm positions or movements to make my dance more interesting and engaging. I can create dance formations that effectively express my thoughts and feelings, and I can come up with choreographic techniques that bring forth a strong impact to my audience and at the same time will make my dance feel finished and well put together. We have these indicators, being able to do myself with and understand what this is, need supervision to do this, but understand what this is. I do not understand what this is and I cannot do this. At least students are able to reflect whether in terms of readiness in doing the performance task. What about this one? Okay, so it is very clear also in our learning module that students are guided with the rubric, especially when they will be making now the performance task. So I hope this is now very clear to us teachers that there is emphasis on the assessment that students should be made aware of, okay? Because this is very important and very vital for them to know what will be their basis in their performance, in all their performances. So with the use of these assessment tools and guides, students will be able to really perform well because of these certain criteria that they have to consider. So let's go back again to the sample diary curriculum map. So this time, we are now able to put on the specific parts under the different parts of the curriculum map. So here, we can see here in the term quarter 4, the unit content is the exercise program through festival dance. The content standard says that the learner demonstrates understanding of guidelines and principles and exercise program designed to achieve personal fitness. The learner modifies the individualized program to achieve personal fitness and alongside with the appropriate and corresponding competencies, which is linked to the real criteria. And of course, assessment, which is appropriate also to the competency that they should be developing, and also specific activities that would help the students to materialize and for them to develop that specific skill, and also the resources and the institutional core values. So here, it is very evident that there is alignment already in the different parts of the curriculum map. At the same time, the vertical progression of the skills that students should be developing. So let's take a look at the PEAC certification assessment instrument, again emphasized, because this is what the PEAC certifiers will be looking at in that important document, which is the curriculum guide. So these items should be seen that in the curriculum map, that there's a line is aligned with the philosophy, vision, mission, goals, and objectives, and is aligned with K-12 curriculum guides, standards, and competencies. It shows horizontal alignment between standards, competencies, assessment, instruction, and resources in all the learning units, and articulates vertical learning progression across the different grade levels. I hope that is now very clear to you. And here now is a sample quarterly calendar of competency clusters. So since we only meet once a week and a total of 8 meetings is provided for MAPE. So this is how we are able to calendar our lessons all throughout a particular unit or quarter. So we have here example first Monday, we have the meeting acquisition of cluster 1 and offline and online activities. Second meeting now, acquisition cluster 1 and cluster 2, offline using YouTube videos, cluster 3, acquisition test. Then fourth meeting, we now proceed to the making meaning part. And for fifth and sixth meetings, we can do the scaffolding, and the seventh and the eighth, now the performance task. So let's now have a summary in terms of the making of the curriculum map. So again, what is highlighted and emphasized again is the question, how will schools now be able to cover and meet the competency, the standards and the competencies in the new normal, knowing that we have limited number of days. And one of the important document that ESC schools should be submitting is actually the curriculum map. And in the curriculum map, there are three main sources that we can refer to in the making of the curriculum map. And these are the DepEd Curriculum Guide, the DepEd MELCS Matrix, and the PEAC Certification Assessment Instrument. Now, in the recertification of requirements of alignment in curriculum map, so these are the different parts of the curriculum map. So let's not forget that the content, the topic content, the content standard, and the performance standards are taken from the DepEd Curriculum Guide. The competencies, again, are taken from DepEd Curriculum Guide or DepEd MELCS, and teachers will have to provide the assessment, activities, resources, and for the institutional core values, it is taken from the school's vision and mission. And in the recertification, it is emphasized that there should be alignment in all these important aspects. So what is our goal here? So our goal here is actually to teach enduring skills for work and life and in the 21st century. And to ensure that one, with the use of the MELCS, we do the 7 techniques, unpacked into sub-competencies task. Number 2, repeat in another unit or grade level. Number 3, follow up in higher grade levels. Number 4, cluster with other competencies. Number 5, merge with other competencies and rephrase. Number 6, focus on skill rather than on content. And the 7th, align with the unit performance standard. And another technique here is streamlining for endurance or transfer by making use of these 2 techniques in streamlining. Technique A, aligning the content standards and competencies with the performance standards. Having these 7 steps, copy the content, the performance standards, and write the unit topic. Unpack the transfer goal and the performance task from performance standard, then write in diagram. Review DepEd Curriculum Guide, the school curriculum map, and take out the competencies that are not directly aligned with the performance standard. And these competencies may already have been taught or may be taught in another grade or unit. Classify the remaining unit competencies in terms of AMT learning goals, where A and M with content standard and T with performance standard. Unpack when needed. The 5th one, unpack the essential question and the enduring understanding with the make meaning cluster of competencies. Then we establish link with content performance standard, with the content standard and the performance task. Number 6, cluster the A competencies and establish link with content standard and the performance task. And the last is determine assessments for A for quarterly assessment and M for the written work type. So here in technique A, we can make use of that diagram for us to be able to see a clear picture, a bird's eye view in terms of alignment. And the second technique is identifying power and supporting competencies and clustering these. And how? So we do the 4 steps in identifying. Identify power and supporting competencies using real from core set of competencies. Make clusters of power and supporting competencies. Sequence clusters with the last related to the performance task. And the 4th is set the budget of time for teaching cluster. So to end this afternoon's webinar, let us take note of the quote by Jack Ma here, and it says, "Never give up. Today is hard. Tomorrow will be worse, but the day after tomorrow will be sunshine." I know the task is very daunting, dear teachers, but I know we will get through this. Let us trust the process, especially in the make use of those techniques that was mentioned in the webinar, and we pray to God. God bless us all.
Thank you very much, Sir Janice. Yes, we still have time for a few questions. Yes, we have a question here about collaborative learning. The sender is asking about how will you be doing collaborative learning or group performances through online streaming?
Okay, so in terms of collaborative learning, I think it is also best that students can also really tie up with their family members, especially that they're not allowed to go to school in the setup that we have right now for this school year. So maybe we can make use of the members in the family for that one, especially if they have brothers and sisters at home.
Okay, thank you, sir. Here's another one. Do you wish to be clarified regarding
Yes,
PE 12? According to the sender, Ms. Marilu Santos, PE 12's learning outcomes or topic was changed from dance to physical fitness this year in the MELCs. Should they apply the one in the MELCs, even if PE 11 and PE 12 will be the same?
Okay, so we have to remember again in the guidelines with the use of the MELCs that in the MELCs, it is only suggestive and not prescriptive. So in that case, if we feel that it is best for us to go back to the use of the K-12 curriculum guide, the existing K-12 curriculum guide, then we make use of that one.
Okay. Sir Janice, could you do the unsharing first?
I'll stop the...
Okay. Here's another question. If students can't go to school, how will the students understand the topic better? And how can teachers, especially in PE, help them better?
Okay, that's a very, very important question, really, that we need to address. I also believe that it is best also that teachers in this particular situation that we are into right now. So aside from having the learning module, it is also best the teachers will have to record themselves, especially with the unit topic that they are going to teach, especially that PE involves a lot of physical activities most of the time. So it is best that teachers will really have to record that the teacher themselves are really setting examples as to what they should be teaching their students.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Janice. For those who were asking about the learning modules, the learning modules are available for download from the PEAC website. All you have to do is look for the quick links, which is found on the right side of the web page. Look for the learning module repository, then click on the subject that you need, and you may already download whatever module you need. And those who are asking for the handouts will be available for download only after all the subject area webinars are done. Okay, so again, Sir Janus, thank you very much for sharing your expertise with us. Thank you very much also to our viewers. Do you have any word for our viewers, Sir Janus?
Yes po, to all the PE teachers out there, kayang-kaya po natin itong gawin. Marunong tayo nito. We can really find a way to address all these concerns that we have right now. Okay? So kayang-kaya po natin itong gawin.
Yes. Again, thank you very much, Sir Janus, and thank you to all our viewers. We hope that you have learned something valuable from this webinar. And maybe for those who are still thinking of watching the other webinars, this webinar will also be replayed through the PEAC's FB page. So those who are asking if they can have a soft copy, can just have it on replay. And tomorrow we will have 2 more additional subject area webinars. Okay, so again, everyone, thank you and have a good day.
God bless po lahat.
Good day, everyone. We're back. I'm Mady Malanta from the Training Development Unit of the PEAC National Secretariat. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar for TLE Home Economics on streamlining the K-12 curriculum, an approach to determining which standards and competencies to teach. This program is part of the pre-opening activities and interventions of the PEAC to assist private schools in their recovery and readiness of operations for school year 2020-2021. This program is part of the pre-opening activities and interventions of the PEAC to assist private schools in their recovery and readiness of operations for this year. Our speaker for this afternoon is a graduate of BS Food Technology from UP Los Baños. She took up her master's in educational management at Polytechnic University of the Philippines. She's a TLE teacher for 18 years and a PEAC trainer and coordinator for TLE-HE, and currently the TLE and ICT coordinator of Canosa School of Santa Rosa in Laguna. Their teachers, let's welcome Ms. Benilda Corpus. Hi, Ma'am Nilda.
Good afternoon, Ma'am May. Can you hear me, ma'am?